Just a little bit about myself. I've been with ASU for 9 years this October. And before I came to ASU, I worked for a very large NIH funded center in South Dakota at a medical center. And I worked with 9 of the 11 tribes in the tri-state region of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So we were van warriors, and we traveled all over the tri-state area, working with American Indian tribes on their health and IRB infrastructure and all of those things. So that's where my history comes. And I am having Allison forward the slides. So Allison, if you can go on to the next. The viewpoint in which we are doing this presentation is how I would work with faculty across the Global Futures Laboratory, which is over 800 faculty across the entire ASU landscape. So when faculty start to work with us, the first thing I do is I ask them their why. Everybody that works with us gets to go through the Simon Sinek Start With Why book. It's extraordinarily important in order, in my viewpoint, with an MBA, understanding why you are doing something comes through in all aspects of your writing for a proposal. So we push really hard for you to get past that, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and move to the why. Oftentimes there is a personal connection for faculty, and that can connect to the evaluators that are looking at the grants. Next slide. So we often talk about blue sky thinking. So if there were no barriers with budget or timeline or who you had to have as part of your group, and everybody took all the guardrails off, what would your goal be for this proposal that you are submitting? So take off all of the limiters that are, restrictions of who's going to be joining you, all of that. Think really big, blue sky, nothing is hindering you. And I want you to think about that picture. And as we're working through developing the proposal, I often ask faculty to go back to that blue sky image and find some key points that you think would carry across to collaborators. So in other words, if you are with this city of Mesa and you're going to work with the city of Glendale, and you know that drought is something that is important to them and they're working on their drought mitigation, so you guys are coming at it from the same why, those are really solid partners. So if you don't have the same why, then you need to come together to align with a new why that you co-create together. By doing that exercise and doing the blue sky thinking, you're aligning the language and how you look and portray the work that you want to do in this proposal along the same lines. So that is one of the first key things that we do. I'm going to kind of go through the slides quickly, but we can send them out. And also my contact information is in the slides. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Next slide. So biggest struggles for faculty that I have seen in figuring out what their whys are is that sometimes they want to do everything. And oftentimes that's too much. So sometimes you have to narrow that scope down a little bit. And for a specific proposal, your why may not be able to be as large. So we've got some examples of winning successful whys that were funded. And so they continue to use that why throughout the proposal. They may change the language just a little bit, but they always refer back to that specific why that is agreed upon by the group of PIs for that proposal. Next slide. So a couple of other things that we have created in working with faculty. Navita, did I say your name right? I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Do you want questions now or do you want me to wait till the end?
If you can wait, that would be great.
I'll wait. Wait.
Okay, thanks. So we've created a couple of templates for faculty to work through identifying what their why is. So a couple of things that in doing that, we help them identify if they need collaborators, where are their possible gaps in who they have in their pocket with their networks? Are there templates that are needed across the entire proposal? What is the methodology, models, any sort of data alignment, things like that, the nuts and bolts of things that we need to get done. We try and do that sort of more boring stuff first, because those are foundational components that you will then be able to align with as you're working with people from different cities or with SRP, for example, and having different goals, but your your whys still align. Sorry, next slide. So here's a good example of why articulating or developing your research vision for a specific proposal is really important. We spend a lot of time in my office talking about the sponsor's goals, the sponsor's strategic plan, their budget, and what is their strategic plan based in years. So for example, oftentimes the language of a strategic plan for a sponsor can say one thing, but the budget actually shows something else. So they can say that our goal is to look at drought mediation, but their budget actually tells the truth of where they're going. And so if they have more money going to farmland and doing, assessments around that and not drought mitigation, then you understand that the finances are their goals are one thing, but the strategic plan of the organization, it's oftentimes that the leaderships don't talk to each other. And so if there's confusion, this is where you bring it up with the program officers. But sponsors' goals need to also be your goals. You need to be very clearly articulating those goals back to them in your own language. So what that means is you are going to have to spend some time digging into who that particular sponsor is, whether it is the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, USAID if you're doing something international, NSF if you're working on the science focused side of it. So ensuring that you are able to reiterate what it is they are saying is their main area for target is extraordinarily important. And being able to do that allows you to take your proposal from being one of many to standing out at the top of the pile. And you want, by the end of the first, second, at the very least, the third page, you want these evaluators, the reviewers, to fully know what you are doing, who your partners are, and what you're expecting your impact to be. Next slide. Okay, so as we move into the sponsor profiling, and again, we walk faculty through this, and so I can share out the templates that we use. But we started doing sponsor profiling right about when COVID started hitting. And so everybody was put into these little boxes in the windows of our screen, and we lost a lot of the ability to have that face-to-face connection. So being able to do it very well through your writing really was highlighted through COVID. So as we were developing a template for doing a profile on a sponsor, one of the things that we really wanted to focus was, how do we set ourselves apart? How do we, as ASU, who is with our charter, is expected to bring those that are outside of academia in, and how do we really lean into that charter and make sure that that charter comes through in our research, in the way that we are talking about the research proposal and the work that's going to be done, as well as the impact to the communities, the impact to the students, and the engagement of both. So being able to sponsor the profile and look at their goals, their priorities, their budgets, how are they communicating these opportunities out? Do you follow them on social media? A lot of program officers, if not all of them, are now required to have some sort of a footprint out in social media. So follow them, let them get to know you, work with your students on being engaged in Instagram and Twitter, and the other one is Thread, I think is the new one. I'm showing my age a little bit, but anyway, I will send out the link for the sponsor profile template so that you guys can kind of look at how we develop this with the faculty. But it's super, super important, especially if you're bringing together a group of separate people that want to apply for a specific proposal, especially around infrastructure. And looking at how do we align with what they're asking, especially with all of the changes now around Justice 40 and the requirements of bringing in disadvantaged communities. You would probably not be surprised to know that across the federal agencies, the program officers and the leaders of those agencies have had a lot of difficulty coming together to define disadvantaged communities with the same definition. So that is something that they're still working on within the government. So for us to understand what they mean can be a little difficult. So don't be afraid to ask questions to the program officers. Next slide. So a couple of ways that you can start to profile these. This is a great opportunity if you have interns in your office, a great way to start dipping their toes into understanding some of the language that sponsors are using. If you have a coordinator that's interested in doing things like this, again, very easy way to get them started to understand how sponsors talk about things, because it's a whole different way of speaking. There are often workshops or conversations that are open house type opportunities where you can just pop into open office hours with these program officers and just very candidly ask them conversationally, like, how would you feel about if we were going to do a regional group focusing on X, Y, and Z, and here would be the partners, here's our model, and they are phenomenal at giving real-time feedback. Next slide. So again, the programs, I'm going to use NSF or Department of Transportation. There are divisions or directorates within each of them. Can I share how to review past words? Oh, absolutely. Sorry. So one of the things that we look at when we're doing sponsor profiles, and you'll see it, I think it's maybe the next slide or the next one of the two slides. Here it is. We look at what is our competitive advantage? And so by doing that, we look at what was funded in the past. If it is an annual call, if it's a brand new call, then we really dig into who are experts in that topic across the US and how have they fared with that specific sponsor in the past? And then we start to evaluate the competition. And it can start as simple as going down the Google rabbit hole. It can be in the sponsors awarded. They don't share full proposals, but they will share who the awardee was and what the abstract is. So we are not afraid to reach out on faculty's behalf. We will reach out to a university. Actually, we reached out to one in Guam the other day to ask for a successful proposal on an international one. And believe it or not, they're actually really excited to share a successful proposal and to increase their network. So having informational conversations with larger groups that have been successful, great way to start. So next slide. Analyzing the call. This is where most people fall short. I would say that we do not have a lot of faculty that fully read the RFP in its entirety. They become experts, they know where to look, and I push them really hard to read the entire thing, because even if it is an annual call, there can be differences added to the call that you maybe weren't aware of, or if it's a new program officer, you want to make sure that they understand and know who you are and what you are known for. And so that's really important. Who is going to be the reviewers? You would be surprised to know that most of them, you can actually identify who would be great reviewers on a list through the proposal submissions. So there are ways that you can give yourself a little bit of a leg up in that area. We can talk more offline about that because I know I'm running out of time. Next slide. I'm going to just let you read on this one while I just talk about how the big black box of these sponsors can seem so scary. The program officers want to give their money away. They want to have successful proposals. They want to have their goals met. So reach out, start with them, but make sure that you have a well thought out plan, that you've got maybe a project summary written, that you can email them that project summary before you have a phone call. And that if you can have someone be a part of that meeting to take notes, so you can just be present in the conversation with the program officer. You want them to feel that they have 100% of your attention. Next slide. So again, a lot of this is just content that I pulled from other slides for faculty. I do think a lot of this will be applicative to you. But one thing that I will say, if you can just go to the next slide, is that some of the things that you want to really make sure that you are doing, these are the 4 things that I commonly make sure when we are reviewing proposals, that it's directly tied, whatever proposal narrative is directly tied to the sponsor mission, that it is really clearly focused on the research field, that it is either advancing that knowledge or that it is impacting a new group of people, and that there are impacts. The impacts need to be felt. That is one of the bigger changes now with this infrastructure funding, is they want to see those impacts reach past academia. And that's something that we have not in academia done very well. So I'm very excited to be a part of this conversation to see how we can really start to work together in building these relationships. Faculty are not great at that. So my plea to you is that we work together in really starting to build long-term relationships that allow us to be able to pivot when a new call comes out, and that we're not just asking for letters of collaboration, but that those relationships really are deep and are mutually beneficial. So we'll slip through to just the last couple slides because I want to end on keep going. There is one slide. Next. One more. Sorry, this one. This is the one I wanted to get to. Through preparation for today, I did a lot of conversation with the Knowledge Enterprise, and we tried to identify a key point for municipalities and partners to begin their quest for identifying partners. And so with that, Laura Ferry is our Associate Vice president of research within Knowledge Enterprise, and her office has offered to be the beginning. So we will start with, if you want to, or you have identified a proposal and you don't have a partner, and Anne and Allison have not been able to identify one with you, we can start with engaging Laura in email conversations in trying to get you connected with the right people at ASU, because I know it is, we're a behemoth and it's hard to know where to begin.